Welcome to TEOLUMEN Insights, where we reveal the hidden forces that shape the way you live and show you how to use them to create real transformation and supercharge your health, mindset, and daily life. Here are your hosts, Emma Greenwood and Nathan Sinclair.
Picture this, you're not just made of star stuff, you're practically a walking, talking light show.
Yeah, it's true. We're diving into the world of biophotons, ultra-weak light that all living organisms, including us, emit.
Our listener today has sent in a stack of research on this, and I have to admit, even I was surprised by how much is out there. So are we talking about some kind of bioluminescence, like fireflies, or is this something else entirely?
It is a bit different. Think of it more like a constant, subtle glow coming from every single cell.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Where do we even begin with the idea that our bodies are emitting light?
Well, the journey really kicks off in the 1970s. With a physicist named Fritz Popp, he dedicated his career to studying this phenomenon, and even coined the term biophoton. And just to be clear, Popp wasn't some fringe scientist. He earned his PhD in theoretical physics and became a respected professor of biophysics and medicine.
So he was the real deal, digging into a topic that probably sounded pretty out there at the time.
Yeah.
What was his take on why our cells are glowing?
Popp believed that these tiny bursts of light weren't just random byproducts of our metabolism, but actually played a vital role in how our cells communicate.
Cells talking with light. I'm all ears.
Right. It's like our bodies have their own internal fiber optic network. And just like fiber optic cables transmit vast amounts of information using light, Popp believed biophotons could be responsible for a similar level of complex communication within our bodies.
So instead of just chemical signals, we have this whole other level of communication happening with light. That's incredible, but how does that even work? What are these biophotons made of?
Think of it this way. Every cell in your body is constantly buzzing with metabolic activity, like a miniature city with countless processes happening simultaneously. Biophotons are thought to be a byproduct of these processes, tiny sparks of energy released as cells go about their business.
Okay, so if our cells are these bustling cities, then biophotons are like the little flashes of energy you see from a distance.
Exactly. Now imagine those tiny flashes of light carrying specific information, like a Morse code blinking between cells.
So it's not just the presence of light, but the patterns and frequencies of these biophotons that might be communicating specific instructions. That's fascinating. What kind of instructions are we talking about?
Well, think about everything your body does every second without you even thinking about it. Growth, repair, defense against threats. Biophotons could be coordinating all of this at a level we're just beginning to understand.
So what you're saying is that this faint glow within us could be orchestrating the very symphony of life. That's mind-blowing.
And it gets even more interesting. Research has shown that when DNA unwinds, like when cells are dividing, there's a particularly strong burst of biophotons. Imagine this. Every time your cells replicate, a tiny burst of light signals the event. It's like an internal Morse code conveying vital information for growth and repair.
It's like our DNA is having a conversation with the rest of the body, using flashes of light. What else have scientists observed about how biophotons behave within our bodies?
One of the key characteristics that make biophotons so intriguing is their coherence. Imagine a laser beam, where all the light particles are moving together in sync. That's coherence. Biophotons, unlike regular light, exhibit a high degree of this coherence, which suggests they might be more than just random byproducts.
So because biophotons are coherent, like a laser beam, it suggests there's a purpose, an intention behind their emission.
Exactly. If biophotons were just random, chaotic bursts of light, it would be hard to imagine how they could be carrying meaningful information. But their coherence suggests a level of organization and potentially even intentionality. That's incredibly exciting from a scientific standpoint.
This is already making me rethink everything I thought I knew about how our bodies work. So where does the skepticism come in? Is it simply that biophotons are hard to detect? Or is there more to it?
Well, the detection issue is definitely a big one. Imagine trying to eavesdrop on a whisper in a hurricane. That's kind of what it's like for scientists trying to measure biophotons. They're incredibly faint, and any stray light or even heat can throw off the readings.
So you need incredibly sensitive equipment and a strictly controlled environment just to even observe these biophotons.
Exactly. And that leads to challenges in replicating experiments and comparing results from different studies. It's like everyone's speaking a different language when it comes to biophoton measurements, which makes it harder to build a solid, unified body of evidence.
That makes sense. If you're dealing with something so difficult to pin down, it's going to be hard to convince everyone of its significance. But what about the theory itself? Do critics just have a hard time believing that our cells could be talking to each other with light?
That's part of it. Even if cells are emitting light, how are they receiving and interpreting such weak signals? We're talking about incredibly faint signals here amidst all the other biochemical activity going on inside a cell.
So it's like trying to have a conversation at a rock concert. How do you even begin to hear anything over all that noise?
Precisely. We still don't fully understand the mechanisms by which cells might be sending and receiving these light signals. How would a cell differentiate a meaningful biophoton message from, say, the random light that might be passing through our skin?
It seems like biophoton research is raising more questions than answers at this point. But maybe that's how it always is with groundbreaking science. It challenges our existing assumptions and forces us to rethink what we thought we knew. For example, we've been talking about how biophotons could change our understanding of how our bodies work. But what about DNA itself? How does it fit into all of this?
That's where things get even more interesting. We know that a burst of biophotons is emitted when DNA unwinds during cell division. But some scientists believe this is just the tip of the iceberg, that DNA might be capable of much more than we previously thought.
Like what? Are you saying our DNA might be more than just a genetic blueprint?
There's a growing body of evidence suggesting that DNA itself might be able to emit and even store light. Imagine our DNA not just as a library of genetic information, but as a dynamic structure that can actually interact with light in fascinating ways.
So you're saying our DNA might not just be holding genetic code, but also light, and potentially even information encoded within that light. That's a pretty incredible concept.
It is, and it could have huge implications for how we understand cellular communication and even things like cell memory.
Cell memory, you're saying our cells might have a way of remembering things using light. How would that even work?
It's still a theory, but think about it this way. If DNA is like a library, maybe light is a way for cells to access and transmit specific information. Within that library, it could be how cells remember past experiences or environmental changes.
That's fascinating. So we could be talking about a whole other level of information storage and retrieval happening within our bodies, all based on light. We've covered some of the potential skepticism surrounding biophoton research. But let's shift gears and talk about the potential benefits. Where could all of this lead? What are the possible applications, especially when it comes to things like health and healing?
Well, one of the most exciting prospects is in the field of medicine. Imagine being able to diagnose diseases simply by measuring the light emitted from our bodies. Since biophoton emissions are thought to reflect the state of our cells, changes in these emissions could potentially serve as early warning signs. For diseases, we could detect imbalances or problems before they even manifest as symptoms.
So instead of waiting for someone to get sick, you could potentially see the subtle changes in their biophoton emissions and address the issue before it becomes a major health problem.
Exactly. Early detection is crucial for effective treatment, so this could revolutionize how we approach healthcare.
And what about treatment itself? We touched on biophoton therapy earlier. Could you elaborate on that a bit more?
The basic idea is that if our bodies use light to communicate and regulate themselves, then maybe we can use light to support healing as well.
It's like giving ourselves a friendly nudge in the right direction with a little bit of light.
Exactly. We're talking about things like using specific wavelengths of light to stimulate cell regeneration, or even to target and destroy harmful cells, all with minimal invasiveness.
So potentially fewer side effects.
Yeah.
And a more targeted approach to treatment. It all sounds very futuristic.
It's important to remember that this is still an emerging field, and a lot more research is needed, but the potential is undeniably exciting. And it's not just about physical healing either. Some researchers believe that biophotons could play a role in things like mental clarity, emotional well-being, and even spiritual growth.
Now we're getting into some really intriguing territory, the intersection of science and spirituality. We talked earlier about ancient traditions that describe a life force or vital energy, often in terms of light or auras. Could there be a connection between these ancient ideas and what we're now discovering about biophotons? It's almost as if these ancient traditions were tapping into something real, even without the scientific tools to fully understand it.
It's a fascinating thought, isn't it? For centuries, we have these descriptions of a life force, a subtle energy that animates living beings, often described in terms of light. Now, with biophoton research, we're starting to uncover a scientific basis for these ideas that were once considered purely esoteric.
It's like we're finally bridging the gap between ancient wisdom and modern science.
Exactly. Consider the concept of qi in traditional Chinese medicine, this vital energy that flows through the body, influencing health and vitality. Could biophotons, with their potential role in cellular communication and regulation, be the physical manifestation of qi?
So what was once considered a somewhat abstract concept might actually have a basis in these tiny particles of light.
That's the idea. And it's not just qi. We see similar concepts in many traditions. Take prana in yogic philosophy, for example. Or the idea of a subtle body that's often depicted as luminous or radiating light.
All pointing towards the possibility that we're more than just flesh and bone, that there's a luminous energy flowing through us.
Precisely. And it makes you wonder, if biophotons are involved in these more subtle energies, what about consciousness itself? Our brains are essentially networks of neurons, constantly firing electrical signals. Could biophotons also play a role in how our thoughts, emotions, and experiences manifest?
Are you saying that our thoughts themselves could be emitting light? That's a pretty wild concept.
Yeah. It might sound like science fiction, but some researchers believe it's a real possibility. There's a concept called biophoton entanglement, which suggests that the light emitted by our brains might be connected to a larger field of consciousness, not just confined to our heads.
Entanglement. Now that rings a bell. Isn't that what Einstein called spooky action at a distance?
The very same. It's a quantum phenomenon where two particles become linked, even when separated by vast distances, and they seem to influence each other instantaneously. Now, if biophotons exhibit entanglement, it opens up some truly mind-boggling possibilities.
Like what? Paint me a picture.
Imagine for a moment that our consciousness, our thoughts, feelings, even our intuition, isn't just limited to our brains, but is part of a larger interconnected field of consciousness. And what if biophotons, these tiny particles of light, are the threads that connect us all?
So not just individual minds, but a sort of mind of the universe that we're all tapping into.
That's the idea. Biophotons, with their potential for entanglement, could be the bridge, the missing link, in this cosmic web of consciousness. Of course, it's still highly theoretical, but incredibly exciting to think about.
It certainly throws open the doors to a whole new way of looking at ourselves and the universe. It makes you wonder about the future, too. If biophotons really do hold the key to unlocking some of these mysteries, what kind of future could that lead to for humanity?
The possibilities are truly awe-inspiring. Imagine a future where we can harness the power of light to heal not just our physical bodies, but also our minds and spirits.
A future where ancient wisdom and modern science walk hand in hand, and we unlock the full potential of this light within us. It's a pretty incredible vision.
It is. And while there's still much to learn, biophoton research is shedding light, quite literally, on some of the biggest questions we face as a species. Who are we? What is consciousness? And are we truly connected to something larger than ourselves?
It's been an illuminating journey into the world of biophotons. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.
And as always, keep those questions coming. The more we explore, the more we discover. There's so much more to learn.
This is Nathan Sinclair.
And Emma Greenwood.
Signing off and wishing you a day filled with light.